this is one of my favorite things to talk about. And yes,
Yeah.
we're talking about feet and we're talking about barefoot shoes
The
because
physiology is very interesting from the standpoint that after your genitalia, there are more nerve endings per square inch in your feet than anywhere else in your body. Okay, that should tell you something.
But one of the things that inspired me to start Ande that I haven't talked about yet was back in 2023, I broke my wrist and I was put in a cast, and I'd never been put in a cast before. And that was the first time, like when they took it off, that I realized the mind-body connection was a lot more real than I had previously realized. You know, I couldn't move my hand and fingers the same way anymore. So that I started looking at my feet in a different way after that. Most people's feet are born perfectly normal, and over time, they get deformed, and sometimes permanently. And it's actually one of the saddest things about the whole shoe industry is that young children's feet are still sometimes cartilaginous in the bones, and we stick them in shoes very, very early, and we numb their feet very early, and their feet are growing into these shoes, and their toes kind of start to gradually get pushed inwards, and their bones start to calcify and harden in those positions. And that's not even just the beginning of it.
welcome back to the 90% Healthy podcast. Don, you just took a big breath. Take it away. I heard
Well,
it.
listen, we are excited to have a guest with us today. It's not just Klaudia and I talking at each other, but we've got a really cool company called Ande Shoes. Brent from Ande, the founder, and the owner, founder, I think we can put all that. But before we jump down the Brent rabbit hole, let's go back and set some ground for where we're coming from. And the fact that, you know, when I was introduced to Brent, we started talking about, you know, his shoe company and where it came from. And we have in common that we both got into what they call barefoot shoes. It's the closest thing to being barefoot, but you've got something on the bottom. After reading a really cool book called Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. It's a 2009 book. And what was really cool about it is it talked about the Tara Humara runners down in the Copper Canyon of Mexico that did these incredible runs, marathons, extended marathons, literally on a daily basis. And they talked about their shoes, and then they brought these runners up and they did these crazy events up here in the States, and they were just very effective. And they're doing nothing but, you know, they have a packet of chia seeds and these shoes strapped to their feet. And this is where it got started, because listen, I'm the oldest person on this podcast right now, and I remember when Nike really started to blow up. I'm the same age as Michael Jordan. We were in school at the same time. And so when Jordan and the Nike Jordan thing took off, okay, you know, I got to see that. But prior to that, the Bowerman, the founder of Nike, the track coach out there at Oregon, you know, they started to make running shoes out of a waffle iron. They put rubber into a waffle iron and created some of the first track and field shoes. And this is when we started to develop the heel thickness in shoes. I remember when I was when I first went to Ohio State in 1980, it was a big deal for us to get a pair of Brooks running shoes. A really big deal, because back in high school on the farm, we ran in Chuck Taylors or wrestling shoes. That no, you know, that's the closest thing to a barefoot shoe we had back then. But we've seen this evolution of the shoe, and now we have these incredibly deep, thick soles that people run on. But then we have the other end of the spectrum in the barefoot shoe. So Brent, tell us a little bit about how you got into that.
Yeah. So back in around, I got to say it was 2010, around 2010, I started hearing about Vibram Five Fingers and, like you mentioned, Born to Run. And I was still in school at the time. I was studying exercise and health science in undergrad. And, you know, I was lucky enough to have a professor that was, I forget his name now, but he was very forward thinking in terms of, you know, teaching kinesiology and just framing my, at the time, young mind around the idea that the body is built of bones and muscle and connective tissue, and make an analogy to, you know, a well-oiled machine, and how if one part of that is kind of being pulled the wrong direction or is not being supported in the correct way, it throws the whole machine off. And when I started hearing about barefoot shoes, it kind of sent, triggers off in my mind, because I had been, dealt with flat feet my whole life. I'd had
Mm-hmm.
athletic coaches tell me I had, various degrees of kind of just not not sharp leg pain, but pain that was enough to like prevent me from doing some things in athletics that I wanted to do, and slowed me down from my athletic pursuits. And coaches and stuff chalked it up to growing pains. And then when I was looking at my my teammates' feet, and I was like, oh, they got this arch on their foot, and like mine's flat. Like, why is that? And I got into the barefoot community because of that. And I started experimenting, like I said, with Vibram Five Fingers. And at that time, I just started running them. I started lifting them. I didn't really care how they looked. I thought they were the
Right.
greatest thing in the world. And I went down the rabbit hole on them, and I continued to wear them for years and years, and moved to San Francisco. I was there for 6 years. And after that, I was in New York for 9 years. And I just moved back to New York. But there was a gap there where I stopped using Vibram Five Fingers, and we can talk about it a little bit later. But it was, because one of the main reasons I started ONDAY is because I realized that the toe splay was something that was super important too. And Vibram Five Fingers and other barefoot shoes, for someone like myself who had, cramped toes, it didn't quite do everything I needed it to do. And I didn't realize that was why I wasn't getting everything out of it for a very long time, which is what led to the founding of ONDAY. But I can kind of talk about that part later on.
No, you know what?
podcast.
I had a very similar effect. That I had a fitness facility back in the early 2010s. And one of my members was a crazy distance runner, and he comes in one day with these 5-toe shoes, and he says, "You've got to try these." And I'm thinking, "Are you nuts? I'm not putting those on." And but I watched what he did, and I came across a pair in a running store. I think we were in Chicago, and I found a pair that fit, because I have a really big foot. And I wear like a 13, 14 in American sizes, and so I wasn't willing to order it off the internet. Well, I buy a pair of these, and as a guy with bad knees, eight knee surgeries to date, constantly fighting knee pain, all of a sudden I'm walking around. It took me about a day and a half for my calf to extend to where it belonged, because that's the first thing you got to get used to when you put these shoes on, because you're used
really
to walking. Yeah,
you really feel it.
So once my calf got extended, my knee pain went away. And there's this logic that if your foot's not right, your ankle's not right, your knee's not right, your hip's not right, your back's not right, the entire chain is broken, and this is where it starts. So, and I started the same way with 5 toes, with Vibram 5 toes. The funny thing is I took a picture of my feet one time and put it on social media, and someone says, "Don't you feel judged when you wear those?" And I'm like, "Listen, if I'm wearing these, I've judged you long before you ever saw my shoes, so don't worry about it." So the big difference is there's no natural heel-based shock absorber on these. So which is the way our foot is designed to work, really. I mean, when it comes right down to it, our foot's designed to work up there on that ball of the foot. And when we start running up on the balls of the feet. We'll talk more about running styles here as we go. But yeah, this is where this starts to come out to play. And the Ande shoe, when you showed it to me, I thought the toe splays that you put into them are really cool, because that's the big struggle I have.
There's a reason coaches out there say, stay on your toes.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you look, and there's a lot of, I think it's called the GOTA method now. There's a lot of folks out there talking about, how you see professional athletes moving, and a lot of them are on that forefoot stripe.
Absolutely.
And they're staying on their toes. And even if you look, humans have this uncanny ability to kind of remove ourselves from nature and think that we're different. But whether you believe in God or evolution or both or some combination of whatever, you believe that we were probably designed to operate perfectly, right? And shoes, as they're built today, generally get in the way of that. So what we did was, for for a lot of people, and from my own experience, I have a tailor's bunion on my pinky toe, and my mother has a bunion on her big toe, as do a lot of women and some men as well. My dad has an overlapping toe, and we weren't born with these things. And if you look at the shape of shoes, they're very narrow in the toe box, which is actually supposed to be the widest area of the foot.
Right.
And if you take someone who's had their feet in a shoe like that for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, and just throw them in a barefoot shoe, their toes aren't going to magically just change. And so the barefoot industry spends a lot of money marketing to these people and getting them into these shoes for them to not necessarily be able to see the benefit immediately. I'm sure there are people that are lucky enough to see the benefit, but what I personally experienced was not as much benefit as I wanted. And when I found toe spacers, that's when I kind of had that aha moment for myself and realized that like my foot's meant to like grip the ground and push off through my toes. Like that was the big moment for me. And so I tried to find everything I could to get it into a shoe. And, traditional spacers slip around, they're uncomfortable. And I was like, why isn't there something that's anchored into the shoe? So that's where, the ideation for getting the spacer into the actual shoe and creating a holistic product that solved that problem came from.
So I haven't tried toe spacers yet. Is that something I should go out and at least give a shot? Or, when I excuse me, when I buy a shoe, I have a huge toe box. That's what I've learned. That's the big deal. And coming from a guy that wore wrestling shoes for 13 years, all you did was cram your toes into those things. But I feel like the bigger toe box is giving me the space. When I'm wearing my 5 toes, life is good. The challenge with the 5 toes has not translated well to my nomadic lifestyle. That when I lived in a regular house and had to deal with all the regular stuff, 5 toes worked great. But with being a nomad, they don't like the gravel of RV parks is what they don't like. There's just not enough padding there. But I still buy a shoe with a big toe box. If you know me and you've ever seen me at a trade show, I have 17 different pairs of Doc Marten shoes. That arguably the biggest toe box on the market. Now there's a little bit of lift there. So when someone wants to experiment with this, when they start to take a look at, my knees, my hips, my back hurts, and they look down at all their shoes and they all have these crazy big thick heels in them. What's your recommendation for how they begin to experiment with this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of places you can start as you start to go down the rabbit hole on your own foot health. I think the first thing to do is look at your own feet and kind of look online and like say, hey, how does my foot look compared to someone who's never worn shoes before? And you can find photos of that online. There's journalists and archaeologists and folks that have gone out there and studied tribes that haven't been exposed to Western shoes before, and you can kind of see how the toes spread more. So that's like the first thing I would do, because that might just open up your eyes immediately. It's like, oh, yeah, there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is, take a look at your pinky toe and your big toe. That's the first place people usually notice some kind of differentiation. And a good way to look at it is like, take a look at your hand. Your thumb can go out like this. You can move it around. Your pinky can move around like this and go outwards. If your pinky toe, you look at it, it's kind of like bent inwards towards your other toes, which happens to a lot of men and a lot of women. People don't think about their pinky toe, but it is a critical toe, because it actually helps you grip the ground. And toes meant to spread out, same as your big toe. Like those two toes in particular are critical for that. And then depending on what you find, it's not rocket science. You can find toe spacers on Amazon super easily if you want to play with those. Or, what ONDAY created is a toe spacer system that you can take anywhere with you. So, what we have is this is the Ande one, our flagship shoe. And
Very sharp.
it opens up.
That's nice. Yeah.
But this is meant for accessibility. So you couldn't build a shoe that has integrated toe spacers without having it open in a pretty wide opening fashion. But the core technology is the modular insole itself here.
That is so cool.
You actually take the insole out and you can put it on just like a sandal. We even have some customers that start by wearing this around the house. And you can see here, this can actually pull out. And this is our standard spacer. It's a little bit thicker. It's like about 6 millimeters thick, but we also have a starter spacer, which is slightly thinner. So you can start with this one.
I feel like women can be used to those
without any.
I feel like women can be used to those a little more when we get our toes done, get a pedicure. We get toe spacers when they put the nail polish on the toes. So definitely, and it's interesting. I'll continue, but I'll let you finish that part.
Yeah. So it enables the customer to kind of like get the full experience. And we created almost like a kit so you can like, jump into barefoot and take it everywhere you want to. Because right now, like a lot of people just wear toe spacers around the house. And some people that are, really getting into it might, take it with them. But in order to create a product that, someone could take everywhere, we had to have that insole built in. And then the second thing, just to answer, to kind of top off that question, Don, is, if you're starting to get into barefoot health, you can't just, you can just start like walking around barefoot and putting toe spacers on, but like doing some active exercises can help as well. So, a quick Google search of like foot strengthening exercise will show you toe curls and like pulling up, towel crunches with your toe. And, you know, learning that your foot is supposed to press down into the ground to help propel you off the ground is something not everybody like inherently thinks of. And when someone's been using like a Hoka running shoe that has this word curl, it's called a toe spring. They say it helps you with running, but it's really a crutch. And that toe spring does more to hurt you long term than anything else because it prevents your toes from curling down and pushing into the ground. So like having that awareness of your foot is important too.
Well, and I'll tell you, as I look at the shoe industry, I'm trying to remember the name of the shoe that Nike puts on all their runners in the Boston and New York Marathon. It's an incredibly light shoe. I think people lose. They look at the construction of the shoe and they look at the thickness and so forth. But I watch those runners and none of them run with a heel strike. They all run with their feet up underneath them. If you want to learn more about this, if your listener wants, it's either called pose running or chi running. You can go pick up both of those. They're online. When I had my fitness facility, I taught pose running. And I would teach it on a treadmill, and I knew someone really had it down when I couldn't hear their foot strike on the treadmill. If I put someone on a treadmill running normally, boom, 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 you hear all that energy just getting pounded into the mechanism. But when you get that pose running or that chi running, it gets silent. It's almost like a cycling in fact, you look at cycling, we look at 90 RPMs. Same thing with a good pose run. You're up on the balls of your feet, you're pulling through, you're forward lean. And having that right shoe sure makes a big difference. And again, I don't know. There's people at Nike that get paid lots and lots of money to design shoes, and I'm definitely not in that caliber from an engineering standpoint. But for Joe Bag of Donuts out here walking around the streets, I think it's important to take a look at, okay, what are your foot mechanics? Do I feel my foot? Is my foot working the way it's supposed to? This is what you've been talking about. And we starting to pay attention to that. There's been several papers published on the role of toe flexor strength directly tied to overall balance and fall risk. We see weak intrinsic foot muscles predict mobility issues. We see foot proprioception plays a major role in total body stability. So this awareness of our foot, breaking our foot out so it can work the way it's made to work, has so many health delivering benefits. And I think that's what you're going for with your product. Hey everyone, we are returning from a technical difficulty. This is a first for us. We've never had to do this before. No, the internet did not want to play today. But we're going to jump over to Klaudia real quick. She's had some questions, and that was what caused the technical problem. But we fixed it. We're good to go now. So
yes, I had
Klaudia, bring it on.
I had some questions, but my internet wasn't on right, and I couldn't get them through, and I was boiling in my seat.
You better sage that thing and get the bad ghosts out of it.
Before we started recording, I was like, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. And yes, we're talking about feet and we're talking about barefoot shoes because I've only discovered this arena the past maybe 3 years, and the number of eyes I ever get when people see me wearing those types of shoes, not to mention when I go through the airport wearing the toes socks, people look at me like, oh, that's interesting.
You don't wear heels all the time? Every time I've seen you, you've been in heels.
Because at these conferences, I wear heels. And let me tell you, this past weekend, I was at Eudaimonia and I was wearing heels the 3 days in a row. my feet were on
Brutal.
fire. It's brutal because I can feel the lack of mobility and the lack of range of motion that I have after these 3 days. And in general, it's something I need to work on, which is what I wanted to kind of piggyback on. We talked a little bit about, how you know that your feet are not optimal, not only optimal looking, but also behaving in an optimal manner. And I wanted to ask a little bit about some of those activities that people can do. Like, even just put your fingers between your toes to kind of space them if you don't have a toe spacer yet. And is foot massage something we should be thinking about to kind of activate some of those dormant muscles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, massage is important for any muscle group in the body, and I think one of the really overlooked things that people don't realize is like when your feet get sore, they're sore for one of two reasons. They're sore because your shoes are too tight, usually in the toe box, which is what you just described with heels. Women experience that probably more often than men do, or they're sore from walking around a lot, and it's the muscles that get sore. There's muscles in the feet. They're tiny ones, and there's a lot of them, a lot more than other types of parts of your body. But massage definitely helps. You want to increase the range of motion in your foot just like you would in any other part of your body, while also strengthening alongside of it to get the maximum results. And what a lot of people kind of don't necessarily realize is what the human foot is actually capable of. I think, as a lot of people in my generation do, we spend a lot of time online and like kind of going down Instagram rabbit holes or TikTok and YouTube, and you kind of find educational videos. And, I came randomly across this video of a girl who unfortunately doesn't have hands. She lost them in an accident, and the things this girl can do with her feet, she's like shooting bows and arrows with her feet. And that is something I can't even imagine doing, and she's got other videos where she's doing interesting things with her toes, and like she can move them all very dexterously and individually. And when I look at my own foot, I'm still working through rehabbing my own feet, and I can't move my toes individually. Like this girl could play a piano with her foot. That's what the human foot is actually truly capable of. And there was another video I saw of a guy, I think probably somewhere in Southeast Asia. He picked up a brick with his foot. And I was like,
A
that's
brick?
a brick. Picked up a brick with his foot on the long end of the brick. The brick was just right length so that he could kind of curl his heel and his toes over the brick. But this man picked up a brick with his foot. And obviously it was the right length. It wasn't like his foot was like a hand, but it was the right shape and right length so that he could get his heel and his toes just over it and grip over the brick. So, and not everybody's going to get there. I don't necessarily recommend everybody goes that far. They're picking up bricks with their feet, but like it just kind of shows you what the foot is capable of. And we don't need all this cushioning. And when you strengthen your foot and you've kind of increased the surface area to which it touches the ground through toe spacing, you're actually starting to create that base for strength.
And to an extent, you could even reverse bunions, and you could reverse that inward-looking pinky toe if you're training your feet over a period of time. Like I've seen that occur. And like my mom is starting to develop bunions, and I'm like, Mom, you need to start wearing your toe spacers and do a little bit of work on your feet. And it's just interesting. People don't think about their feet until they hurt. Like that is when we start thinking about it. And I mean,
and there are studies out there now that can show that toe spacing can have benefits of it. It can delay the need for surgery.
The physiology is very interesting from the standpoint that after your genitalia, there are more nerve endings per square inch in your feet than anywhere else in your body. Okay, that should tell you something. And when you're wearing a cushion on top of all those, they're not working. And the body, when nerves are not working, the body goes into a stress mode. So this is really important that you start to pay attention to. You got to get those things turned on. You got to get them working. And this is where a barefoot, is there another word for it, Brent, besides barefoot shoe? Flat shoe, no lift shoe, something like that?
Minimalist, maybe? I've seen it in
Minimalist,
research.
true foot shape. There's a lot of different kind of words out there for, and there's various widths to the shoes. But the core features of a minimalist or barefoot shoe that customers that are looking at any brand, not just Ande, should look for is the width of the toe box. It should be wider than what you're looking at. You should have an anatomical toe shape. The other thing to look for is a flexible sole. So you want to have as much kind of feeling with the ground as possible while still protecting your feet to some degree. And then you also want to have a zero heel drop. So most shoes on the market, if you look at a Nike or like an Adidas or just any casual shoe in general, it generally has some degree of height to the heel that tapers towards the toe. And any kind of lift in that heel throws your whole gait off. Obviously, heels are a big portion of that. And that can be fine if your foot is strong enough and you're already walking on your forefoot. That's why some people don't have as much of a problem with this as others. But you want to be accentuating your toes in the front, making sure your toes and your ball of your foot are hitting the ground first and pushing off. And then the final aspect that Ande really emphasizes, if you have some degree of permanent foot or toe deformation, like toes being too squished together, a bunion or a tailor's bunion or something that's starting, having something between your toes can really help and spread them back out to more anatomical position. And you may even want to just go on Amazon and just do some research on what else is out there, but you'll find a lot of products that can help.
How long do you wear those toe spacers? Because there's so personal experience. I put the toe spacers in, they feel kind of comfy, but after 3, 4, 5 minutes, they begin to a little bit uncomfortable. And then slowly my toes start to lose blood flow.
I have a great answer for you.
Okay, please.
I have a great answer for you. So we talked a little bit earlier in the podcast about the foot having muscles and bones and tendons and connective tissue, just like any part of the body. Now, tell me this, when you do other stretches, if you stretch your hamstrings, for example, or hold a pigeon pose, how long do you hold it for?
Maybe a couple minutes at best to really deepen that pose. Yeah.
Right. And what if you held it for 20 minutes? Would that really get in there?
They'll get real uncomfortable.
Yeah, it'll get uncomfortable. So the same goes for your toes. Toe spacers are meant to gently expand and stretch those little tiny muscles in your toe. They're behaving exactly like a larger muscle, like a hamstring or a quadricep or a shoulder muscle behave. It's just on a micro level. That's why we have the thinner spacer. Mm-hmm. So you can start with that little stretch and you kind of graduate over time. So, you wear them for maybe 5, 10, 20 minutes at first. You kind of quickly, if you keep up with it, you can quickly graduate to 20 minutes to an hour to wearing Ondays to Disneyland for a whole day, which is something, I've done. And I've played games of tennis in Onday. And the longest I've worn them personally is 8 hours. And after that, you just take them off and you let your toes kind of go back to normal and then you put them back on and you're ready to go. But I would say treat it like you would any other muscle group that you're stretching, and that discomfort is just your muscle stretching.
Yeah.
Brent, do you do the toe socks?
Occasionally, if it's cold out, I can do toe socks with Ande around the house. I'm usually barefoot or wearing toe spacers or wearing the Ande insole. So I'm usually wearing some kind of toe spacer to try to help my feet. And I've got all sorts of other interesting kind of foot things around the house. I got these cool sandals that have kind of rocks, pebbles. They're not they're polished rocks. They're from Japan or China. It's like an Asian sandal that it's a reflexology sandal, and you put your foot in it. It's like walking on little pebbles all the time, and that it's it's a really good way to, like I said, get a massage, like you mentioned earlier, Klaudia, is getting a massage on your feet, and it breaks up that connective tissue, which for me is a problem because I have flat feet. I'm trying to retrain my arch to be more pronounced, but I'm in my 30s now, and I'm on the long haul to retrain that.
That said, I do want to stay on that flat feet for a little bit because we have a lot of people walking around with a flat foot, and they're told wear the high arch shoes, do this, do that, in order for you to have a better foot positioning. But you don't have to have flat feet for life. There's a way to, because initially arch is a muscle. So if you are able to strengthen it and train it and be better at foot stability, functionality, etc., then you could bring back
retrain.
Your arch, retrain your arch. Is it possible?
Yeah. So you can retrain that muscle to activate more effectively. I think all people have varying degrees of which their arch can develop at all, and some people are more prone to having a flat foot than others. But one of the things that kind of, inspired me to start Ande that I haven't talked about yet was back in 2023, I broke my wrist and I was put in a cast, and I'd never been put in a cast before. And that was the first time, like when they took it off, that I realized the mind body connection was a lot more real than I had previously realized. I couldn't move my hand and fingers the same way anymore. So that I started looking at my feet in a different way after that. And I started getting into toe space, and I started training my foot and trying to retrain that. And I think the most important thing is realizing, and a lot of influencers talk about this in the mobility fitness arena now, is strength and tension through range of motion is really important to prevent injury. So like if you are gripping the ground and creating tension through that arch actively while you do a squat or you do whatever other movement you're doing, you're starting to retrain those neurons to fire and prevent injury, and kind of retrain your arch to develop more. Some people have naturally really high arches, and they have an entirely different set of challenges though. And I think it also comes down to people's varying foot widths, because foot width is partially genetic, and someone who has a wider foot naturally is going to have more problems if they're put in a Nike shoe or Adidas compared to others that might have a more naturally narrow foot. My wife has no toe problems at all, despite wearing heels and other shoes, and that's just she has a naturally narrow foot, so it doesn't impact her as much. Whereas I come from German, English, Scandinavian descent, and I've got like these wide feet that just get crushed
We
in
call
shoes.
those paddles.
I got paddles.
I got paddles. Yeah, hooves. We have hooves. Listen, I have this. We have the same issue. I'm 6 feet tall with a size 13, 14 foot. Never grew into my foot, but it really, again. So if someone's listening to this, couple things. Number one, if you're struggling with knee pain, back pain, hip pain, things like that, and you haven't thought about your feet, it's not a bad idea to start there. Work with a healthcare professional, chiropractor, massage therapist, someone that's familiar with gait. Start to do a deeper dive into this, because this can be a real source of pain. Not everybody needs zero lift shoes. Your wife sounds like a perfect example of this. She does fine with her heels and so forth. Not everybody needs that wide toe box. I do. I don't like wearing most of the name brands. I mean, I was getting ready to say Nike, but Adidas falls into that too. The toe boxes are just tight, and my foot is not happy in those. I'm happy in a Doc Marten. I'm happy in a 5-toe. I'm happy in a great big shoe with a big toe box. And so this is something to start to take a look at. Therapy for your feet, strength therapy. Go ahead and start to strengthen those dudes if you're struggling with it, which may be nothing more than walking around the house in your bare feet. There's a lot of people that won't do that. But just starting to get that foot working again can make a lot of difference. It can lead to a lot of improvements. What were the other things that we threw in there, Brent? Other key areas, maybe you do toe exercises. I know in physical therapy, when you're rehabbing either your foot or your ankle, they'll teach you to drag a towel with your toes.
Toe curls.
Toe curls, this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things that you can do. And I'll tell you, if you're in the biohacking community, I really hope our podcast grows an audience outside of biohacking, but getting out and grounding, getting out in the grass, spending time in your bare feet out in the grass. God, there's a lot of benefits that come from that, not the least of which is a healthier foot.
A good example to that is, I wonder how many people ever walked the beach for bare feet for like a half an hour, and maybe the next day felt a little soreness in their feet. It is activating so many different muscles because you're grabbing the ground and you're walking and it's uneven. The terrain is not your usual like flat and you don't have any projection. And that is a perfect sign that your feet might need a little more consistent work. And also, Brent, have you heard of toe yoga? It is a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Can you tell a little bit about what that is?
Yeah. So toe yoga is, just I mean, it's gotten a lot more popular in the last few years, but it's just learning how to stretch and strengthen your toes in a proper way. A lot of times people incorporate toe spacers into that exercise, but you know, like you just mentioned, changing up the surfaces that your foot is on and kind of the angles at which um, it's pushing off of different surfaces is super important. You know, while putting your foot and like walking the beach and walking on the sand and the earth is good. You know, a soft surface can also, you know, strengthen your toes and part of that grip, but also, you know, pushing off of something that's, you know, a rock or something that's firm gives you that perfect thing to actually push off of and build strength. So you can build strength in multiple ways. And then to the point of toe yoga, you know, stretching, you know, it might seem kind of tedious, but we talked about, you know, how the muscles in your foot are just like any other muscle, right? You stretch it for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 20 minutes, whatever, using toe spacers. But by stretching the muscles around the foot in different ways, you know, I'm forgetting the name of the actual stretches, but I just was doing them this morning where you're on your knees and you have your foot pressed towards the bottom of the ground and you do the same way,
Yeah.
or you press off of just your toes and you press as far forward as you can
Yeah. Sometimes I
with your toes
cramp.
like this. And you might even be able to crack your toes sometimes, you know,
I cramp
um,
sometimes.
and you
It's
can cramp your foot.
it's not fun.
Um, Another one is just creating like imagine creating a fist with your foot, and that helps create tension and to retrain those nerves in your foot to press down into the ground. Even if it's just a fist, it's one of the exercises they had me doing to retrain my wrist when I broke that. And I kind of translated. I talked to the PT and I was like, you know, because I was thinking about creating Ande at this time. And my PT at the time was like, yeah, you could do that with your foot. It's the same thing. All the muscles down there just need to activate and retrain those neurons. And so now I like, you know, to get, you know, kind of into my own personal journey a little bit. Um, if you look at a lot of people's feet, you know, their toes kind of curl downwards like this. My toes were just flat. They're kind of like just flopping around. It was almost like you know, and for a long time, I didn't think about my feet as, you know, active part of my body, unfortunately. And, you know, that's part of what led me to create Ande.
Klaudia, your background in dance, you've been cramming your feet into little shoes for a long time.
Well, I was dancing. I did acrobatic dancing and acrobatic gymnastics. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
wasn't in ballet, but ballet,
Okay.
gosh,
Well,
destroys women's feet.
oh my God, packing their foot. Well, but other dance use pretty tight shoes. I mean, ballroom uses a pretty tight
Yeah.
shoe. And so I was curious if that was because, like I said, there's no doubt I have that pinky toe that rides up underneath the next toe, and I'm constantly working with that. This is how I started working with a single toe spacer back in the day because it would rub and create a little sore. So I started putting a little spacer in there, and then that's when I really started to explore the five toes with the encouragement from one of my members. And it goes hand in hand. So we're really talking about three legs of a stool here right now. We're talking about the structural support of the foot. Listen, it would be great. Would it be great if we were on the Serengeti? No, probably not. But we walk on concrete, we walk on hard surfaces, we walk on surfaces that are just not friendly to the bottoms of our feet. I think as we get older, and I think I get softer. I don't like walk. I used to go barefoot everywhere as a kid, and we were barefoot on the farm all the time. Um, but as I've gotten older, I do it less and less and less. But I do need to walk barefooted inside to keep my feet together. So some type of structure or protection is part of it. Number two, exercise the foot. Take those joints, take that same mechanistic process and exercise it. Ande, do you put anything on the website? Is that part of your brand development, or do you we still going out and searching the internet for that, Brent?
Are you asking if our website is live?
No, is your website supporting any of the foot exercise stuff?
We have some blog posts, and we have one in
Good.
particular that has like a foot workout related to it, and we've also got some other, you know, fun, usually research supported posts on there too. One in particular, I think the ladies might be most interested in, is we did one on the connection of the foot to glute development
Oh,
and toe strength.
Yum.
Yeah, so all the ladies out there that, you know, are concerned with that, you know, barefoot training can help you there.
I mean,
and then that third level of that is performance. And this is where the chi running, the pose running, these kinds of things come into play. I forget what the data is something like this. 98% of the people who declare they want to train for a marathon never make it to the starting line or make it to the finish line. 2% make it to the finish line. 5% make it to the starting line because injury takes out 95% of them.
yeah.
And again, if you just go put on a pair of shoes and if you've got shitty running form and you go out and you start to follow a marathon program, something's going to break. It's guaranteed something's going to break. You know, I saw another stat. I was not able to find it in researching for the podcast, but when you look at the level of runners compared to the amount of physical therapists, that there's a nice little correlation there that, you know, that people are running to the physical therapy practice. And a lot of this is because they're not taking a comprehensive view. You know, very few people can go pick up the game of golf without having some lessons and tuning things up. And if you're like me and you go out and you swing at that ball 150 times around, just saying, yeah, something's going to get sore. Something's going to get overused. It's going to be a problem. And the more you exercise it, the more you train. Running's the same thing. And this is, and again, if you want a great read, Born to Run is one of those books that you cannot put down, man. I started in on that and it sucked me right up.
And, you know, I'd be willing to bet that, you know, if all else, if people did not have shoes on at any point, and, you know, they just kind of, you know, had these like maybe moccasins or something to let their feet splay their whole lives and, you know, spent more time walking around like we were meant to, that a lot of people could pick up and run a marathon, just like the Tarahumara in the Born to Run book describes. Is like, you know, injuries are not normal. Most people's feet are born perfectly normal, and over time, they get deformed and sometimes permanently. And it's actually one of the saddest things about the whole shoe industry is that young children's feet are still sometimes cartilaginous in the bones, and we stick them in shoes very, very early. And we numb their feet very early, and their feet are growing into these shoes, and their toes kind of start to gradually get pushed inwards, and their bones start to calcify and harden in those positions. And that's not even just the beginning of it, because you also have the fact that children are not necessarily coming to their parents and saying, "Oh, my feet hurt," or "the shoes are too small," right away. They just kind of are existing and running around and having a good time. So by the time they're old enough to say, hey, and maybe some parents can't afford to buy them new shoes every month or two at the pace at which their feet are growing. So you have all these children that are growing up with their feet crammed into these little boxes. And, you know, like I distinctly remember when I was very young, trying on soccer cleats, being like, telling the sales guy, I was like, "These suck. These are really, really tight and they're cramping my feet." And he said, "That's how they're supposed to be."
Oh.
It's the way hockey skates are too, unfortunately. And having a daughter who played hockey, you know, we went through it, and my daughter now walks around with a size 12 men's foot. You know, she's 6'1", and she wears a size 12 men's shoe. So there was a period of time we were buying hockey skates every year. Certainly, there was a couple years we bought them every 6 months. So yeah, that's part of the challenge. So if someone wants to explore Ande more, ONDAYShoes.com.
Correct. Yep. ONDAYShoes.com. No spaces, nothing else, just ONDAYShoes.com. You can also follow us on our socials. Instagram is also Ande Shoes, and TikTok is at Ande Shoes. So ONDAYShoes.com is where you can purchase the shoes right now. And we have our Ande One, which is the one I've kind of shown today. This is our flagship shoe. Every pair comes with everything you've seen today. It comes with the spacer insole. It comes with the starter spacer that's slightly thinner. It also comes with a standard insole in case you want to wear the shoe without the spacers for a period of time. And then if you want to get really, really minimalistic, you can wear it without any insole at all. So if you wear it without any insole at all, you're just on the liner here, which puts you about 4 millimeters off the ground, which is about
good looking shoe. This is what got my attention, that you know, that a lot of times new shoes come on the market and they just look wretched. That's a shoe that I can wear either with active wear, or I can wear it with a nice pair of jeans and a suit, and it'll look sharp. And I'm sure you'll get compliments if you put that shoe on and you wear it in a fashion sense.
Oh,
Thank you.
Fashion meets function. We love those.
So If you want to learn more, like I said, Ande Shoes, that's where you're going to learn more about the shoes. Go over there and take a look, pick up a pair. Again, if you struggle with sore ankles, sore knees, sore hips, sore back, there's a lot of science that says you got to look at your feet. And looking at your feet doesn't mean loading your shoes with inserts. It means your feet getting healthy again, because once the foot works, the ankle, listen, there's a song about it. The foot bone's hooked to the ankle bone. If there's a song, it's real. So you can learn more about Ande. If you want to learn more about what Klaudia and I do on a daily basis, you can either go to my website, trainrecoverwin.com, or you can go check out Klaudia on the Longevity Journalist on all her socials. This kid travels all over the country. She does really cool stuff. She's in really cool places. It's a great follow if you're looking for something pretty cool to do. Klaudia, where are you going next? What's on the schedule next?
I'm actually covering something along the lines of America and health and Maha and Mar-a-Lago
Oh,
in
okay.
the next month. It's just a one-day event. I don't know any details about it, so stay tuned, I guess.
Are you going to A4M?
So that's exactly the problem. It's on the 16th and A4M is 14th through the 16th, so I might not make it to A4M.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it this year. Not either. Brent, are you guys out in the wild yet? Can we see you at a show, or can we see you with your product out? Touch, feel, look, smell.
We haven't started going to shows yet, but we hope to in 2026. We're still an early brand. We launched at the end of August of this year, really September 1st, and we've seen a tremendous outpouring from people that have grown up with foot shoes or experienced them now are getting into barefoot, and we're just trying to keep up with the direct to consumer online stuff right now. But we hope to get into trade shows and retail as we grow. But right now I'm just trying to keep up with the growth and.
I'm excited. I saw him. And I thought, okay, awesome. And we just talked a little bit ago. He's got some bigger sizes coming along, so you start to get some bigger sizes. You've got a customer there with me. So hey, thanks for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
If for our listeners, if you know anybody, feel free to share, to like, to follow. All those things help us with our podcast. Our listeners are growing. I think we talked about it last week, Klaudia, that I actually met one of our consistent listeners, and we're starting to get feedback from the internet. I had 2 people request the 20 tips for improved for HRV. So I had 2 people request that. So people are starting to pick up on that. So we're excited about that for a podcast that's been going for less than a year. This is episode 40, by the way, Brent.
Yes.
We're working our way. We're working our way towards that 1-year anniversary. So we're getting closer. So thanks everybody for listening. And we got a couple other cool podcasts coming up this month. So stay with us because we got some cool guests coming. Not that Brent's not a cool guest. Brent's a very cool guest.
Yes.
And we're glad to have him. And we're really excited to be part of seeing Ande. We want to watch him grow and take off and dominate the world.
Yes, I agree. Thanks so much,
That's
Brent.
the goal.
It was so nice.
Thanks for having me, Klaudia, Don.
See you.
Lovely to be here. Thanks.